I'm here today with a man named Tom. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Andy.
Now, we're going to talk about a few things today. Dalek Christianity is a book you've written, which is one of them. We'll get into life and faith and all that kind of stuff. But just let's kick off right away with that one. Dalek Christianity. What's that all about?
It's a title that should get you thinking, obviously, first of all, because you think, what on earth have got the Daleks got to do with Christianity? Because the main thing about the Daleks is they wanted to exterminate everything that was not exactly the same as them. So it kind of throws the question back at you, what is your Christianity like? And how do you get on with people who perhaps see the faith a little differently? And this is more a how-to book. So it looks at various items such as culture, language, listening, which I'm very bad at, actually, and finally finishes on Romans 14:6. Romans chapter 14. And the tagline is empathy and understanding in the Bible and the differences that we find between different ways you can express your faith. And it's really the boring title would be Unpacking Jesus' Prayer for Unity in John 17, but I didn't think anybody would be interested in a title like that. It sounded like an academic essay. So Dalek Christianity it is.
That's fine. It's a bit more it's a more punchy title, isn't it? But I mean, if it's doing the same thing, that's kind of what it needs to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So I want to come back to the book a little bit later on. You're talking about faith and Christianity, but let's just jump right back for you to you growing up. Where did faith become more than just going to church on a Sunday thing? When it was more personal to you. So what's your life and faith growing up?
Well, I didn't go to church on a Sunday, Andy. Perhaps I did until I was about 8, but then my dad moved somewhere else and we stopped going to church. I found church rather alienating. I'm not neurotypical. I remember that I was given a prize at Sunday school, and I was thinking, but I haven't gone in for a competition. And then there was a colouring book that said Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem on a grey donkey. But at the age of 7, I noticed that grey was spelt wrong. So therefore, this couldn't be true because it was an American book and it was spelt Gray instead of Grey. Now, a lot of you, I think about 10% of you are relating to that. And the rest of you are going, what on earth? So this is part of my journey. And this is actually where the book starts. Sorry, I don't want to talk about the book, but Jesus meets you where you're at. And for me, I looked at people as I grew up and I thought, what on earth are they doing? What does it mean? Where are we going? Why are you here? I was asking all those big questions, but church didn't seem to have the answers. Now, thankfully, I went to university and I ran into some actual real Christians who were able to take time to talk to me, answer my questions, and live life with me. One of them was the late, great, you may have heard of him, Andy, Mike Rimmer. And he was a friend at Leeds University, and he took me to places, and he talked to me, and he got me to meet other Christians. He tried his best to answer my questions. So it was through him and another friend that I did come to faith, finally finding meaning in life.
So your journey, I mean, I do like finding out from people their journeys because there are I think 2, possibly 3 fairly common journeys of faith. One is where people go to church every week and it's sort of part of their natural life. Then they realize, I quite like this. And actually, I want this to be part of me in a more personal way. They meet Jesus. Mm-hmm. Other people might have quite a dramatic way. Perhaps they come later in life. University seems to be quite a common age for a lot of people, I think. And again, this is just generalizing, but sort of university age of thinking, well, there's more to life than this and that church stuff that maybe I heard about in primary school, or the odd when the vicar came in to do an assembly, actually Absolutely. There was something in that. And then it draws them in. But I think there are others like you who church, well, yeah, it's fine. It's something we could have done, but actually you come at it from a different perspective. But that's a great thing about Jesus Christ, is there is only one way to God, but there's actually all sorts of ways that we can come to him wherever we are, as we're meeting who he is, that then having that amazing relationship.
That's right.
So you are not going to church. You have university. People then help you encounter Jesus in a real way. you say you're not necessarily typical, but what did your life look like once you'd actually gone through sort of early years of not attending church because it wasn't a normalized part of your family, having faith at university? How did your faith develop from that point?
Well, one of the things that Mike did was instead of sort of preaching to me, he would play me Christian rock music. So Randy Stonehill, Larry Norman, that was how I started. And but it was a very definite time. So a lot of people, their journey seems to be bit by bit, but it was a definite time where I thought, this is what I'm going to devote my life to. I knew it wasn't, oh, well, let's try Jesus and see what it's like. It was, this was someone who I could devote my whole life to and realize that my life had a purpose. And what happened was, one interesting thing was I believed quite soon that God was able to guide you. And at the time I was studying Russian and French. I loved Russian literature, which has got a lot of Christian themes in it. I did not get on with French literature at all. And I remember thinking, I need to get on with this. There was a year out program for the Russian and French students, and usually you went to France for a year because it was the Soviet time and going to Russia was not always a possibility. And I thought, I just need to get on and do the next thing. I didn't want a year out in France. And so I met my lecturer who was in charge of placements, and I said, can I change to just single Russian with subsidiary French, knowing that I then wouldn't have to do a year out because you couldn't get a year out. And he said, yes, in your case, I think that's a good idea. Actually, yeah, he said, and I've just said no to another student. And then he said, why do you think that? Why have you asked? And I said, well, I know this is an academic course, but I just think God wants me to do this. And he said, oh, interesting. Yeah, my wife's a Christian. She does all this God stuff. 4 months later, he also became a Christian. It was exciting. That was the only encounter I had with him. So, and during that time, other students started to run a prayer meeting for Wycliffe Bible translators. And so that got me interested in mission. I found out about language and things, and I wasn't going to talk about this organization. So anyway, so I found out about mission. I found about the world. And I just thought, sometimes people feel that you need to have a call from God to do something. I kind of felt the other way. You almost feel you need to have a call from God not to do something. I thought, I speak French. I'm healthy. I don't have any family ties that people I have to look after or anything like that. So some people they had a mission morning or mission day organized by the Christian Union, and there were various people there. And there was a team from OM who said, why don't you come to France for a month? And I thought, well, there's no reason why I can say no. I'm free. I have a small amount of savings even. I don't even have to raise funds for it. I mean, the amount of money we had to raise was a very small amount anyway. So I just thought, well, let's do this. And so it was through the doing that I got involved in that. And then I thought, well, yes, anybody can do this. It's just Jesus in your heart. You're sharing the message. Holy Spirit is there. You're a human being. You connect with God. You don't have to have a huge background. Now, I probably was a bit overzealous and I've got a bit more mellow as years have gone by, but yeah, that's sort of how it went.
You find yourself in France on a mission trip with Operation Mobilization, who we know of, did some amazing stuff around the world. How did you find mission then? Because a lot of the time we think, well, we'll do mission, but it's easier if I go abroad, and that's going to be easier, or at least not for my hometown. And we think of Jesus himself, who struggled in some ways with where he grew up because he was known as a certain thing. And when you change that, it's quite hard. And I guess many people would have a similar kind of experience. But how did you find actually being in France doing that mission?
Well, actually, can I go back to something that you hinted at in the sense of difficulty of doing mission in your hometown? Now, I'm a member of a denomination that actually sees England as a mission field. So we have to be missional in our church. So actually, this is actually my challenge to you. If you live in England, which you probably do if you're listening to this, or British Isles, well, you might be listening to it anyway. But think about the number of people who are following Christ and the percentage of people. And you probably find it's quite small. You probably find that in a lot of countries that we traditionally see as mission countries, and there's now a larger percentage of people following Jesus in those countries than there is in our own country. Now think of the ways you've tried to reach your people, the people around you, and think about how it's working, because it probably isn't. I mean, many people have said if you always do the things you're doing, you'll always get the things that happen. That's not quite how it goes, but you know what I mean. So if you're still trying to reach people the old way, wonder why your church isn't growing, because we're living in a post-Christian society. We've just come back from, our church has just put on something called the Narnia Experience, which was a completely interactive, dramatic production for primary school children. We had 60 children go through on one day, and we had them in groups and sharing about Aslan and the fact that you can be forgiven, and the stone table and all these things, and really connecting with people. Our church also has a cafe, which is very, very busy during the week. We have to start connecting with people and making them realize that this is something that can change their lives, and something that is real. And it's going to be different from the way it's traditionally been. Like, I think traditionally, Sunday school, how many churches have a functioning Sunday school these days? I mean, ours is just starting again. So to get back to how was it abroad, the answer was, it was because I spoke French. It was not that difficult. But yeah, it was a challenge. We had a job to do because it was basically a literature campaign, and we were having to reach every house with some literature. So the idea was, this is the absolute bottom line, basic. At least we will get some message out somehow. In those days, OM had a very sort of strict regime when it came to spending money, or should I say not spending money. And I remember I was left back at base asked to make pancakes. Now, where I come from, pancakes have a lot of eggs in them. So, and then we were making pancakes for about 12 or 15 people. So I used most of a box of eggs in the batter mixture, and everybody was horrified. Well, that's the picture of assumptions. It was assumed I would use hardly any eggs, and it would be mostly flour and milk. There you go. Anyway, I was forgiven, so that's good. But, so one of the things about going on mission is you're thrown together with groups of people with different assumptions, and you have to learn how to get on with them, how to cross cultures. And that's probably has a value in itself, as well as the proclaiming message that you've been going around street to street. Although I do remember going up to one farmhouse, and a very large dog wrapped its teeth round my wrist and followed me like that all the way up to the letterbox and back again. So it was, I sort of stayed calm and I didn't get bit, but the message was obviously very clear. You better behave yourself or you'll have your hand bitten off.
Well, that's well made, isn't it? That's definitely a security guard, isn't it? It's interesting about the cross culture, because I think, and I've said this before, but if we go from the UK, I mean, we're sort of global in our reach of the station. So I know we're talking to people in Montana and Canada. So when I'm saying good morning, I'm saying good afternoon. When I'm saying torchlight, I'm saying flashlight, sidewalk, pavement. There are some fairly easy ways of being cross cultural. But then I go from Wolverhampton, where I grew up, to Manchester, which is 90 minutes, 2 hours away. And you find yourself actually with quite some different cultures. We're literally in the same country. We are a number of counties apart. And yet there are some differences. Someone says, do you want a bomb cake? And you're thinking, what on earth are you on about? Because even the word for a bread roll is different in Manchester.
Absolutely.
Than Wolverhampton. And all of a sudden, there are differences. But when you're going from England to France or to Kenya or to America, yes, even if there's some similarity with the language and it's a basic core, there are some huge cultural differences that can be quite shocking. Like I said, just working with other people in another land, it's a challenge.
I just came across this story at the weekend. Some folks from Gold Hill Baptist Church lent us their stone table. It's not stone, it's foam, so you can carry it, but it looks great. And they found out I was involved in mission, and they gave me a story of a Western preacher who went to a Muslim country and said, you know what, you can stand on the Bible, and then promptly started to put a Bible on the floor and stand on it. The Arabic-speaking elders at the front rushed him at once so violently that they broke his arm to prevent him from standing on the Bible. Now, there are two things terribly wrong with this. First of all, respect for the word of God means you do not stand on it. And secondly, the phrase stand on, if you look at it, what does it mean? It means in some aspects of colloquial English to fully trust in, to take, but it doesn't actually mean stand on. So even the metaphor that this preacher was using wasn't going to work with his audience. So one of the things that the book looks at is, it says, there's one chapter says, are you monocultural? Are you intercultural? Because a lot of people have, and that explores that as well, makes you, oh, there's different ways of looking at things. Okay. There's also a chapter exploring a language and use of language. Great thing about it is it's not an academic book. It's really easy. It's only like 65 pages long. So it asks some big questions, but it asks them in really easy, chatty ways. So if you're struggling with that, yeah.
Fine. Let's move on to the book.
Yes.
Dalek Christianity. You're saying it's not a huge book. It's something that people can access. What's the general point of the book? What's your hope and your purpose? What's your heart behind somebody reading it? Where do you want them to finish? As they turn that last page, where are you hoping that they're going to be, that they weren't at the start?
I think the church is at once again, we're in a season of extreme dividedness over many, many areas across the globe. On the other hand, I see little points of unity. So my real goal is that if through reading this, you will go a few steps forward to appreciating someone who maybe you don't agree with. I mean, so you find that Jesus' prayer for unity is not the prayer that we should all think exactly the same about issues, but that we should come to a point where we can at least respect one another and recognize one another as brothers and sisters. The thing about the book is, rather than just sort of being a plea, I'm sure many people have done that, it is actually a to-do. So it does actually give you some strategies and ways of thinking and ways of doing that might help you to do that. So you might have got to the point where, how can I get on with these people? They think so differently from me. But this book will actually help you do it. I mean, my dream is that it will be an ideal book for a Churches Together Lent study group, for example, that sort of thing. So that's my dream. At the moment, that hasn't quite happened, but Wendy Pawsey, who's mentioned in the foreword, has actually said this is an important book. It's a message that needs to be said. Which is nice of her. Obviously, it's my book, it's my dream, it's my baby. So, am I biased? Well, of course I am. But it's from my heart. It's got all sorts of lovely little anecdotes from my life, and lots of stuff from the Bible as well. So, and it's got questions for leaders, and even after the questions, it's even got suggested answers for leaders. So if you want to lead a small group and think, yeah, but what if people don't sit there and don't come up with any answers? You've actually got some for you after the questions.
This whole thing of unity is quite an interesting one, because it's very easy to see the differences. It's very easy to be, especially in the social media age, of being enraged with something because we're not actually having to speak to the person into their face. So we get away with saying things that we wouldn't dream about, in a normal culture. But this memory came back to my mind when I was at school doing A-level. I think it was a geography A-level kind of thing, because we were looking at socio-politics, all that sort of stuff. And the teacher put us into two camps for like a little court case. And one side was defending one side was defending the other. And half the class said, yes, we all agree with this. And some of us on the other side were saying, but we don't agree with this. And says, yes, but that's the point. You need to learn not to defend what you hate, but you do need to understand perspectives that you don't agree with, because in understanding that person, you'll find some common ground, so you can actually come together. And it was quite interesting. I have no clue what it was. It's 30 years ago, but I do remember there were some very upset people in that room of 16 to 18-year-olds who were saying, I absolutely hate that I have to defend this. And it's like, that's the whole point of the exercise, is not to make you believe something that you so vehemently disagree with, but in defending it, you will understand it. And it's the same reason why I think it's really good that we don't just buy one newspaper, but we have a collection, and we buy from all sorts of political backgrounds, because then it gives us a much more balanced view of the world. Otherwise, we're in our little church, and I mean a little church, if we're like an independent in particular, and you have our way of worshipping, And as a worship leader, I can arrive at a church. We don't sing that song. We've never heard it, really. But we do this one, which of course you'll know. Never heard of it.
Never
I
heard
mean,
it.
even just with a song, it's like, but the fact that you sing it, that's your world, and it's not mine. And I've got quite a wide set of songs for the last 30 years, but I still turn up at a church every so often and think, I have no clue what that song is from the 1990s that you think is brilliant. Never heard it before. That's fine. But that's just music. That's not even politics, although I think music sometimes is even more, it's more of a minefield sometimes.
More elemental. Yeah, I once tried. I was involved in. I was leading worship for an international conference, and I put out. I added to the mailing was if you have some favorite songs, please send them to Tom Schwarz, and he'll see if I wanted to see if there was a pattern. Anyway, about 6 or 7 people sent me some favorite songs, and they were all completely different. So I've never done that again. I've just said, okay, well, we'll go with the songs that we think are right for the gathering and got the right message and, will help gather people together. What is interesting is that I'm involved in the worship band for this EMDC event, which is once a year in either Netherlands or Thailand. And I just heard from Steve, the organizer, and he said, yeah, the worship, we always get people saying it wasn't Pentecostal enough and other people saying it was too Pentecostal. So you've probably got it about right.
The idea of trying to please people is a really tough one. I think as human beings, if we have some modicum of compassion and kindness, we want to engage with people in the way that's meaningful to them, which is fine if there's one of them. But if there's 300 of them, that's 300 of thems, and they're all going to have their thing they like. And I think that one of the goals, especially as Christians, is we should never try and just please a person or even a group of people, actually, because the whole point about Christianity is we're trying to become followers of Christ, followers of the way. And actually, if we're trying to please God and everybody's upset, but God's okay with it, then that's good. I mean, we're not supposed to upset people unnecessarily, whole different thing. But actually, if our heart is to try and please God, then that it's the heart that He's always after. And if we do that in the right heart, people will see the heart and it'll do what it's got to do.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about barriers and getting rid of the barriers, but we need to understand what are, for example, working with Muslims, at the end of the day, you have to make it absolutely clear that the honored prophet Jesus did die on the cross. Yeah, you cannot water that down in any way. He died on the cross to cover our sin, our shame. Now, but there are many, many other things you can do to reach Muslims that can break down the barriers. For example, respecting the Bible, having it in a really nice cover, all those sorts of things. Not unnecessarily speaking ill of Muhammad, because there's no need to do that in order for someone to come to Jesus. Little things like that. But there's a process where you need to understand what is the offense of the gospel, because all of us are challenged by it. At the end of the day, we all have to lay down our ego, ourself, and say, there's this guy called Jesus who is Lord, and you have to submit to that. None of us actually like that, even though what He has for us is peace, it's love, it's joy, it's forgiveness, it's eternal life, all these good things. But we all have this ego that somehow wants to reject that, and that's the human state. Those are the real barriers that Jesus has already broke down, and we have to face up to them. But there are also cultural, language barriers that we do need training, and I think we need to be humble enough to realize that sometimes we don't know, and we need to get training from experts when we're wanting to reach out anywhere across our culture. And these days, anywhere across our culture is not very far, because the world is becoming intercultural. The world is becoming a huge mishmash of cultures. One of the other things I do, I'm involved with something called Resonance Band, which is an intercultural and global worship band, but we also do training. So to help churches to think about, well, who have you got in your church that doesn't just like, Coldplay on a bad day, which is what most worship music is these days. And what other things can we do? So I'm involved in exploring that as well, which is very rich.
So Dalek Christianity, the idea of how we can be united by asking questions, I'm guessing, of what you can do in your sphere. How do people get hold of the book if it's some of this they're thinking, oh, this sounds quite interesting? How do they get hold of the book?
Well, it's just a matter of Googling Dalek Christianity. You'll find it on Amazon. You'll find it on Eden. In your own country, if you don't have Amazon, there are all sorts of online booksellers. So the best way to do it is quite simply just Google Dalek Christianity, and you won't find anything else. There's a picture of, it's very clever. The publisher's done a picture of something that it's sort of a gold and blue color, and it looks like a Dalek, but when you actually look at it, it isn't. So we haven't actually broken any copyrights by doing this image. This is not an image of a Dalek, but it flipping well looks like one.
Have you got a book just in people who are watching us on YouTube later? They can just see a copy of the book.
Let's. There we go.
There we are. There's the book.
There we are.
So if you want to see a copy of the book, you need to watch the video later. But Tom Schwarz, Dalek Christianity, Empathy and Understanding in the Bible.
I am hoping to do some intro videos on YouTube, but it's one of those things that, you'd love to get around to one day. But
we've all got those projects, haven't we, that we're trying to get towards.
Yeah.
Tom, thank you. Dalek Christianity. Go off on Google or whatever your browser search engine is.
Absolutely.
Available on Amazon as well. Dalek Christianity by Tom Schwarz. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pure Media, the magazine, is hand-perfected with some of the finest writers from around the world that we could find. And yes, Andy B too. New editions are released just for you on the first Friday of every month, from our family to your family. Pure Media, the magazine, is available now. Sign up for free at puremediafamily.com/magazine.